I'm Alias Neo, and I have some questions for you. Do you get off on horror? Do you like chainsaws? What about some good old-fashioned slapstick?
Oh, a wise guy, a head clunker, eh?
Came from back.
Get out of here.
He didn't do it.
And you did. Get out. Get out.
No matter what it is that brought you to Sam Raimi's Evil Dead franchise, it has managed to solidify itself in the hearts of millions of fans. Bruce Campbell's interpretation of the lovable, foul-mouthed anti-hero, Ashley Williams, has captured the hearts and imaginations of generations of people, with his no-guff attitude and his unwavering self-confidence. Now, the famous actor Bruce Campbell has been brought back to reprise the role that started his career in the new show found only on Star, hashtag not sponsored, Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Yeah, looking good. Looking sweet. Uh-huh.
The series is currently in its second season and has co-stars Ray Santiago as the likable but possibly too naive for his own good sidekick, Pablo.
Punks are gonna pay. I got this.
Bull by the horns, Jefe! What the fuck is going on?
And Dana DeLorenzo as Kelly, whose attitude and quirky lines are quickly making her a solid rival to Ash's character in the show.
There's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, up Schitt's Creek.
The show has also been lucky enough to have the addition of Lucy Lawless to the cast full-time as the Necronomicon hunting Ruby, though in my mind she may have been more valuable an asset to Agent Coulson over at S.H.I.E.L.D. Ahem.
And I mean, how's it been for you, Lucy, coming back to television and having this interaction with the fans? You know, obviously you had a great career before that, and it's continuing now.
Yeah, it is. In fact, Bruce, thanks for reinvigorating my tired old career.
Poor Lucy. I know you never left TV. As much as I have been enjoying the new show, with all of its guts and gore and glory, some of the time I find myself watching and thinking, wait, how is it that Ash still has the Necronomicon in episode 1 of the show? I thought that it was left in the past with the wise man, only to be found and destroyed by Ash in the cabin during the original events of the movie. As the show went on, I found myself wondering more and more about what fits the Evil Dead continuity, and even what the Evil Dead continuity is. And I have now put together what I believe is, if nothing else, a fun idea. Full disclosure at this point, I will be speaking about all of the Evil Dead movies, excluding the newest one, as it did not feature the Ash character. And no, the end credit scene doesn't count, though it was the grooviest cameo ever. I will also be talking about many points that relate to Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I will be spoiling many plot points for the first and second season, as the second season has now concluded. You have been warned. The Evil Dead, 1981. 5 friends travel to a cabin in the woods, where they unknowingly release flesh-possessing demons. Ashley Williams, along with his sister Cheryl, his girlfriend Linda, and his 2 friends Scott and Shelley, went out to the cabin for a relaxing weekend. They find and decide to play a recording of old Julian Noby, reading passages from a book which, by the way, happens to be called the Book of the Dead, and might be bound in human flesh and inked in blood of also humans. Also, that passage that they played may have summoned an evil force that began to torture and kill the 5 friends in gruesome fashion. The movie ends with a lone survivor, Ash, having destroyed the Book of the Dead and survived until the morning. He stands in the glow of the warm sun before he is snuck up on from behind by the evil force, and we are left to wonder the fate of this survivor. Evil Dead 2, 1987. The lone survivor of an onslaught of flesh-possessing spirits holes up in a cabin with a group of strangers while the demons continue their attack. However, this time we get a slightly different interpretation of events. Ash and his girlfriend Linda came to the cabin alone. They play the tape of Professor Noby reading from the Book of the Dead, and things play out very similarly to the first movie. Ash is able to survive the night, though he is forced to mutilate the corpse of his now possessed girlfriend. Like at the ending of the first movie, after surviving the night, Ash is attacked by the evil force and is himself possessed. Ash is able to fight against the evil inside of him, though, and is forced to lob off his own hand to prevent the evil from spreading through his body. Ash is joined by Annie, the daughter of Professor Nobi, and her boyfriend, along with 2 other people who are clearly going to die, and after said unspeakable acts occur and everyone but Ash and Annie are dead, the 2 are able to decipher a spell to stop the evil, though Annie dies from Ash's possessed hand, and Ash is thrown into the past along with his car, and he saves a bunch of knights from a deadite, and he's hailed as a hero.
Groovy.
Army of Darkness, 1991. A man is accidentally transported to 1300 AD, where he must battle an army of the dead and retrieve the Necronomicon, so he can return home. We learn early on that things don't seem to have changed much in terms of what happened last time. Ash still went to the cabin with only his girlfriend. His girlfriend died and he was sucked back into the past after having to lop off his own possessed hand. However, we learn that the events of the last 2 minutes of the last movie, Evil Dead 2, have now happened differently, and Ash has been made a prisoner by the knights instead of being made a hero. Ash has to prove himself to the medieval knights before they allow him to retrieve the Book of the Dead, and deliver it to Lord Arthur and the Wise Man. He didn't have a name and was just credited as Wise Man, but you can't hide it, Merlin. I see through your shifty magic. Ash goes through a lot of bullcrap, we'll say, and even fights an army of the dead before he is finally able to get back to his own time and get back to what he loves.
Housewares.
And now, we finally come to Ash vs. the Evil Dead, 2015. Here is also where I am going to start piecing together what could be the proper continuity of what has happened in this franchise. In the TV show, we learn that Ash has been living a somewhat carefree life, and that he is keeping the books safe from the world around him. We also learn that Ash went to the cabin with a group, just like in the events of the original Evil Dead, cut off his hand like in Evil Dead 2, and is explicitly stated by Ash that he has traveled into the past, and we even see him do it late in the second season. So this TV version of Ash seems to have experiences from all 3 of the movies. This seems like such a quick change to the continuity that it really didn't shock me, especially with how many changes that have been made through the movies when looked at as a whole. But what if those aren't actually changes to the continuity? What if Ash went to the cabin with his sister and his friends, but also went to the cabin with only Linda? I submit to you the following theory. Yes, it's multiverse theory. The Ash in the Evil Dead is not the same Ash that is shown in the Evil Dead 2, and that neither of them are the Ash that we see in Army of Darkness. And the Ash shown in Ash vs. Evil Dead is a completely different Ash to the ones shown in the movies. These different interpretations of Ash are from various timelines, and all of them are actually canon. Or this could just be another case of piecing together a continuity out of something that was never meant to be taken seriously or have a solid continuity. I'll leave that decision to you, though. Now, you might be thinking, really? Alternate timelines? How does that make sense in the Evil Dead canon? And all I'm going to say is, Lucy Lawless. Now, I'll explain that later, you impatient primitives, all in due time. But first, let's break down the different interpretations of Ash that we see in the movies. Let's move backwards, though, because that'll be fun. In Army of Darkness, we see Ash looking as good as ever. Even better than he did the last time we saw him, actually. At the end of Evil Dead 2, Ash is being sucked into what I have officially dubbed the time hole. The color is drained out of a portion of his hair. This discoloration would be permanent and should be seen on Ash in Army of Darkness, but when he falls from the sky, his hair is literally perfect. There is also the difference of how Ash is received by the knights in the past, where in Army of Darkness he is taken prisoner, and in Evil Dead 2 he is hailed as a hero almost immediately after his arrival. We see 2 different interpretations of events that happen to 2 different versions of Ash. Looking from Evil Dead 2 to the Evil Dead, the difference is a little more pronounced than the last one, and that is obviously the people Ash takes with him into the cabin in the first place. As I've already established, the majority of the characters from the first movie don't appear in the Evil Dead 2, so I'll leave it at that. But what about a connection between the Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, you ask? Sorry, but Ash in the Army of Darkness also went up to the cabin only with Linda, so he can't be the same guy shown in the Evil Dead either. What we are left with are 3 stories about 3 different incarnations of the same incident. But what does this mean for Ash vs. Evil Dead? How does this relate to the Ash that we now watch on Starz? When we look at the movies and try to tell one cohesive story, it It's not hard because the changes to the continuity are so minuscule that it doesn't change the overall story. But what we get when we start taking each movie as an actual entry in the overall continuity of the series is a far different picture of the Evil Dead than we might have thought. In the Evil Dead, at the end, Ash has gone through the most horrific event of his life. He has lost some of the closest people to him in one of the most terrible ways you could imagine. In the end, he is attacked once again by the same evil force that has been haunting him in the woods this whole time, and we are left to wonder what became of this lone survivor. Until Evil Dead 2, where we learn that Ash is possessed by the Deadites. I do believe that the Ash from the original Evil Dead would have experienced things similar to how things played out in the other movies, but some main factors would be very different. There are two scenarios that could play out for the Ash from the original movie timeline. The first possibility is that events play out very much as they do in the Evil Dead 2, where Ash is possessed and is able to fight off the invading darkness, only to team up with Annie and the others to fight back the darkness in the next night. The second possibility is a much darker and, in my opinion, a much more interesting idea, where Ash becomes the host for the released spirit of the book. Just imagine an Ash who was so broken by the death of his sister and closest friends, and he just didn't have the fight in him anymore, giving into the evil book and going on to terrorize Annie and the others who came to the cabin next. Now, at the end of Evil Dead 2, we see Ash get thrown back into the past, and when the Knights of the Age see him, he saves them from a Deadite and they begin to cheer for him, for their hero has come. Ash, of course, is not happy and begins to scream. Yet, when Army of Darkness starts up, we see a very different interpretation of that event where Ash is surrounded and taken prisoner instead. So we now have two different versions of how Ash was first received by the people in the past. Yet, let's think about what we know about Ash now. We see him being treated like a king in Army of Darkness after he saves the people from the Deadite in the hole. Yet, beforehand, he is not treated nicely, as the people think he is a spy of Eric the Red. Ash is understandably irritated with all of the primitive screwballs for how he has been treated up until this point. Yet, if he were brought back to the castle and treated like a hero and a king from the get-go, he probably wouldn't have been so aggressive with the people of the village. And we might have even found ourselves asking, why would Ash ever want to leave a place where he's loved by the people and treated like a king? A lot of tension built between Ash and other characters in Army of Darkness comes from the fact that the people don't trust him until closer to the end of the movie. But if that element of mistrust is never a factor, I believe it's safe to say that Ash would embrace his role as savior of the past, and would indeed become king of the realm.
Hail to the king, baby.
So now we have three definitive Ashes from three different Evil Dead movies. We have the version from the first movie, who is different based on the people he took to the cabin with him, and having what I believe to be an ambiguous fate. We have the Ash from Evil Dead 2, who was hailed as a hero by the Knights, and who I believe never left the past. And we have Army of Darkness Ash, who was abused by the medieval era and was able to return to his own time, only to have the evil follow him back, but where he was still a king in his own way. Now, of these three different variations of Ash, the version from Army of Darkness seems to be the most akin to the TV version of Ash. Yet, the main difference again comes from who went to the cabin with Ash in the first place, and the fate of the Necronomicon. We learn in episode 1 of Ash vs. the Evil Dead that Ash indeed went to the cabin with his girlfriend, his sister, and his friends, like the Ash from the first Evil Dead movie. So here we learn that the TV version of Ash has experiences from the Ashes of all other timelines, but cannot be any of them, as his experiences do not line up with any variation of Ash that we have seen so far. So now we have 4 different versions of Ash from the movies and the TV show. Are you confused yet? If not, then good for you. You have a firm understanding of multiverse theory.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Now, time to explain my Lucy Lawless comment from earlier. You remember the one. How does that make sense in the Evil Dead canon? And all I'm going to say is, Lucy Lawless. Yeah, that's the one. Now, in one of the final episodes of Season 2, Ruby, who is essentially a demon witch trapped in a human form, tells Ash that there are multiple timelines and that time travel doesn't send you to the actual past, just to an alternate timeline.
How?
There are infinite timelines, and always a primary present you which remains constant, but the Necronomicon...
Boring.
Oh, Ash, no. So to sum up, we have indefinite proof from the Lawless herself that there are multiple timelines within the Evil Dead universe. Aren't you glad I waited till the end to tell you that? I believe that we have seen multiple versions of the Ash character, not just one. We have the Ash in the TV show, the newest version of Ash that we have never seen before, who returned to the present with the Necronomicon to hide it away from the world. We have the Ash from Army of Darkness, who in another timeline left the book in the past and evil followed him back anyways, and he has been fighting it ever since. We have Ash from Evil Dead 2, who I believe decided to stay in the past and be treated as a king. And finally, Ash from the original movie, who is either in a situation similar to one of the others or was possessed by the spirit of the Necronomicon. I think that this theory puts the movies as their own individual pieces into a new perspective, while also helping to explain away many incongruities across the series as a whole. No matter what we may think of the Evil Dead timeline, we can all most likely agree that when it comes to saving the world, this guy...
Yeah, looking good. Looking sweet.
is not the first guy we should call. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And leave a comment and let me know what you thought. You can also check out the Justice League Abridged show that I put onto YouTube. You can find it over at Justice Abridged. I also like to delve into Star Wars theories and stuff. So if you share that fandom with me, please check out those videos. Until next time, make sure you all stay